So you guys are, that had to be somewhat overwhelming, but like you said, you guys were in relatively good mental status at this point.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Now, as you're going through the motions with the doctors and the physical people and the PAs, the public affairs people, you're saying, hey, when do I see my wife? What's up with my wife? And no one's really answering that question for you. And finally, you get the chaplain, and you say, going back to the book here, I looked up at him and said, Chaplain, I have a great deal of faith in you, and I want you to level with me. So far, I haven't been able to get a straight answer from anyone, and I want to know about my wife. Would you please be kind enough to tell me what's going on? And he says back, well, Charlie, there is a problem with your wife. She is well, but she has some misgivings. I'm not sure as to the extent, but I'm sure that everything is going to be all right. She's written me a letter, but I didn't want to open it. I felt that you should. And you get the letter, and it's nothing crystal clear, but the message is clear enough that, she's not wanting to stay married to you anymore. And you call her the next day.
Actually, called my parents first.
Okay.
Back in Kansas. I tried to call her, but it didn't work. In fact, they were very protective. First of all, they thought I might be suicidal when I heard the news, and so they were very protective of me. And they wouldn't let me call home. Even the chaplain and the psychiatrist and psychologist wouldn't let me call home.
Home, even to your parents?
Even to my parents, yeah. They had this plan of how they were going to explain this to me, I guess, but they wouldn't let me call. I finally found a social worker in the hospital. Hey, you got a telephone around here? And so I found a phone, and I called my parents back in Kansas, and they're the ones that actually told me. Never forget my mom's words. She said, "Son, I'd give 10 years of my life if I didn't have to tell you this, but she's engaged to be married to another man. She's filed for divorce, and the judge wouldn't give her a divorce. The justification was abandonment. Her husband had abandoned her, and the judge wasn't buying that. And so, but no, that was the first I knew was when my mother told me that she had filed for divorce.
Going back to the book here, a few days later, so you talk to Ann, but then some of the stuff you say here is, I just have to quote it. Back to the book. Yet Ann had told me that she wanted to remarry. I would not become an obstacle to her happiness. I called her parents, and they seemed quite unsettled about Ann's decision. A few days later, I called Ann again, and she complained that many members in the news media had been harassing her. She said she had often been misquoted and was the victim of character assassination. I then talked personally to some of the newspapermen and told them that I did not want her to be maligned in any way. In fact, I wanted them to say nothing at all about my wife. For the most part, they were receptive to my wishes. I gave them a quote which they could use if they felt they had to. The divorce is a regrettable but inevitable drifting apart after so many years. By this time, my hope for reconciliation was dead. I was determined to take it on the chin and roll with the punches.
Well, I may be coming off as a white knight here, but it wasn't at all that way. I really, to this day, believe that in many ways the ladies had it worse than we did, and it's the families back here, the military guys are over there, and I'm sure you've seen this in your experience as well, is that we believe in what we're doing, we're dedicated, we're focused, we're over there having a high old time. The families back here don't have that, and especially my wife didn't know if I was alive or dead from one day to the next. She went through the same years, 24 to 30, that I did. She was supposed to be faithful to me, and she was supposed to, believe that I'd coming home, not knowing if I'd ever come home. And if I did, would I still want to be married? or would I be a basket case and a burden to her the rest of her life? And the other part of this, which I didn't know at the time, of course, but she lost her support group. You know, they had a big wives club, the squadron pilots. All of our wives got together, and they would take pictures and send us cookies and make tapes and all these things. And it was a very close-knit group, the wives of the pilots. Well, when I was shot down, or when anybody was killed or captured, that wife was sort of summarily shunned by the rest of the group. Not officially, but just because they didn't, they didn't want to. They didn't know what to say, and they didn't want to be associated with somebody who had that problem. They didn't want that to affect their life. So she lost her support group. She went back to Kansas, went back to school there, and then when she fell in love with this other guy, she lost what support group she had at home because her parents were upset. My parents were upset. I have a brother 10 years younger than I am that looks a lot like me, and he was of about the same age during this the latter part of this experience that I had been when Ann and I met. And he would go over to mow her lawn in Kansas, and she would break out in hives, serious emergency room kind of hives, just at the sight of my little brother because he looked like me. And so they finally, the doctors restricted him from ever seeing her because it caused her so much grief. So it was tough on the ladies, any way you look at it. And I saw that, and I felt that, and I felt like I needed to do whatever was necessary to give her a little peace.
Well, you might not think you came off like a white knight, but that's a pretty, awesome treatment of someone for sure.
Well, and a lot of people, didn't understand it then, and even don't understand it to today. And some people want to blame her, but I have no animosity, no blame whatsoever for what she did. I mean, it was. I have other people that will say, "Well, don't you wish that you had known early on that she was going to divorce you?" No way.
Yeah, I'd say no to that one.
The thoughts of her kept me alive. That was my purpose, was to go back and be with her. Right. The fact that it didn't happen, of course, is somewhat incidental, but the 6 years I was there, it was certainly a positive for me to think about her.